Hello, everyone. Welcome to Book Mecca. This is our breakthrough series, and my name is Shaylin Scott. I'm the founder of Book Mecca, an online Black bookstore and literary resource for all things Black lit. As you know, every month I have our breakthrough series authors, and they're nationally acclaimed authors who you've seen on Instagram, on Facebook, on Snapchat. The books are in all the book clubs. Everyone's reading them and talking about them. And so today we have a very special book. It is a fun book. I can't wait to start telling you about it. Our wonderful author today is Dawnie Walton, and I will introduce her and let you guys know a little bit about her before I pull her up into our studio for everyone here and give everybody time, if you haven't already gotten your seats and tuned in, to go ahead and round up your people now. So we're ready to go. So, without further ado, Dawnie Walton's the author of the novel "The Final Revival of Opal and Nev," a spectacular debut that has named one of 2021's most anticipated books by Essence, Vogue, Oprah Magazine, Elle, Independent, Lit Hub. I'm telling you, the list goes on and on and on. Her work as a fiction writer and journalist explores identity, place, and the influence of pop culture. A McDonnell Connolly Fellow, a Tin House Scholar, and a graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop. She's worked as an executive level editor for magazine and multimedia brands, including Essence, Entertainment Weekly, Getty Images, and Life. And she's a native of Jacksonville, Florida, and she lives in Brooklyn. So, welcome, Dawnie. Oh, I think you're on mute. There we go.
There we go. You would think I would learn how to work things by now.
It never changes. We learned all the different platforms during COVID, and we still do the same thing.
The same thing. Well, hello. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. Oh, it's such a blessing. I do have to let all of our viewers know, if you have not already gotten the book, this is the book, The Final Revival of Opal and Nev. And can I just say, your book was so much fun to read.
Thank you. I love to hear that. I had fun writing it.
Really? It feels like you did.
I did. And of course, there are serious moments in the book. There are some dark chapters, but there's also some parts that I found funny to write, as someone who remembers certain eras and remembers like the ways that my elders talk and like all of those things. I was just sort of chuckling to myself in moments writing this book and channeling the different characters. It was a lot of fun.
Well, the first question that and we're going to just dive right in. I always have a lot of questions, and I'm trying to get through as many as possible for the end of our time here. The first question is, who was your the character Opal modeled after? Because I have in my head who it should be and who I think it is, the whole thing. But
yeah. So I'm gonna say, so there are basically three women I was thinking about, and maybe one of them will be who you were thinking. Okay. So Opal is basically, she is a Black woman rock and roll star in the early 1970s. And she's an amalgamation of a lot of different Black female trailblazers in music and in fashion. But the three women I was thinking about, the first was Grace Jones in terms of the style and the presentation and the kind of like ahead of her time, out there, very artistic way of presenting herself always. The look and the image was always a part of the music when she was making music. Of course, she was a model first. So it's Grace Jones, Nona Hendrix, who was 1/3 of the group LaBelle. So LaBelle, of course, we know them for Lady Marmalade, which is a song we all love. And they were also the first Black vocal rock group on the cover of Rolling Stone. And Nona Hendrix was the one in the group who really had that rock and roll sensibility. And when she left the group, continued to work very heavily in rock and roll with other Black artists. And I just, I got to do an event earlier this year with Miss Nona, and she's just still amazing and still making incredible art.
Wow.
And then the third person was a 1970s funk icon named Betty Davis.
Oh, that's who I was guessing.
Is that the one?
Yes, yes.
Betty Davis, who was kind of a fixture on the New York scene. She started her career as a model, but she also, she was married for one brief year to Miles Davis, and she also dated Jimi Hendrix and Sly Stone. But she went on to write her own songs and to create a really kind of incredible, badass, sexy persona that was really ahead of its time, and that, the white male rock and roll establishment didn't know what to do with her. They didn't know how to box her or categorize her, but she put on an electric live show in New York. And had a very strong and commanding presence. And she just kind of got tired of wrestling with the labels and like them trying to tell her how to run her career and how she needs to change. And she ended up going back to her hometown where she still lives in Pittsburgh. And they did a documentary about her called They Say I'm Different, which is,
I think I saw that
one of her songs. Yeah, it's on one of the streaming services. But she was also a huge inspiration, her kind of career trajectory and the era that she was really working in. So those three women were the ones that I was thinking about. But of course, there's little splashes of Nina Simone in there in terms of the political content. Yes, yes. Of course, Tina Turner, all these different women were influences on the character.
Okay. Yes. I have read, I love semi-historical fiction type books. I love those types, those types of books. So, but your book, it took me forever to get through it. Not because it was long, not because it was difficult to read, but because I was going through it and like, oh, this reminds me of a song. Let me play this song.
Oh, I love that. I love that you were playing music as you were going.
Yes, I had a whole soundtrack as I'm reading the book, and it got me to looking like it's the story feels so true to life, the characters, that it makes it hard to believe that they're not real. And I could tell that I wasn't the only one that felt like that, because all through YouTube searches was Opal and Nev album. Opal, is she real?
I do hear that from a lot of readers, and it's very flattering. My career, I started as a journalist. And so, working, of course, with like real history and real facts and putting real stories in a historical context. So I feel like I brought that part of my brain, when I started writing fiction, thinking about all the angles and all the things that would make this feel authentic and make these people feel real and make their world feel real, was something like really important to me.
You definitely did that.
Thank you.
And this was your debut novel?
It is my first book, baby. Yes.
Wow. Yes. You guys need to get the book. I'm telling you, you will enjoy every single piece of it. And I would say, if you haven't already, I'd get a little Spotify playlist going.
I do. So there is. So I made a Spotify playlist. Yeah. Okay. Just search Opal and Nev. It should pop up. And it was a lot of fun to put together and also really hard to put together because I was trying to make it very curated and trying to have artists, that I felt were in a similar vein as Opal and Nev from that era, but also have some artists that I feel like they may have influenced, So people like had Janelle Monáe in there and Arcade Fire and like all these groups that I thought might have been like Opal and Nev fans. So it was fun to think about. And it made them, to me, it made them feel even more real.
Yes.
To sort of surround them with all these real bands and artists was a fun thing to do.
That it just I tell you, the whole book made me. There were moments that it made me smile. It made me stop and look. And you even had some moments throughout that I was like, "Ooh, that's a word. I'm gonna write that down. I like the way she said that." It had all of that blended in together so beautifully.
Thank
What was
you.
your inspiration for even the story itself?
Yeah. So the story sparked for me in 2013. And I was home, I was going through some stuff in my personal life and
Hmm.
kind of at a crossroads in my career and really kind of figuring out what the rest of my life was going to look like. And really wanting to get back into writing fiction, but not knowing where to start because it had
Mm.
been so long since I had even attempted to write anything. And I'd always like started a lot of like short stories and I had trouble finishing them and everything. But in 2013, I was home, I was watching, on like an advanced copy DVD, I think, this documentary called 20 Feet from Stardom.
Mm.
And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's
I think
about
I've seen that
background
one.
singers,
Yeah, I did see that.
primarily Black women whose voices you know, but whose names you might not be familiar with. But you
Hmm.
know them from, working with the Rolling Stones. So Mary Clayton,
Yeah.
who sang on Give Me Shelter, all these women. Um, and this documentary was really sort of giving them shine and introducing them to the audience. And in the first 5 minutes of that film, there is footage from Talking Heads, a concert that they were doing, and that's a
Hmm.
band that I always sort of loved. My cousin and I growing up in the 80s. Once in a Lifetime was such a weird song, and
Yeah.
we just loved it. So footage from that concert, and you see the front man of the band, David Byrne, at center stage, and he's got like his trademark boxy gray suit and he's sort of doing his weird dancing. And then you
Hmm.
look to his left and there are two Black women, beautiful. Their names are Lynn Mabry and Edna Holt. And they're wearing these gray matching short sets and they have like micro braids and the bright red lip and they look like my
Ooh.
aunties, basically.
Oh.
And the camera just lingers on them and they are so joyful and committed to this music. And I'd grown up a Black girl loving rock and roll, but not seeing a lot of reflections of myself in it. And in
Hmm.
that moment, I felt something I never felt before, which was this urge to like change history somehow. And I had this weird compulsion, like I wanted to stick my hand in the screen and drag one of those women to center stage with David Byrne
Ooh.
and watch the two of them for the rest of that concert. And so for days after, I'm thinking of this image of this Black woman, this white man, what would have to happen to make them a success and how
Hmm.
long it could possibly last in the context of an era that I've always been fascinated by, which is the late 1960s, early 1970s,
Yeah.
and just follow like what would happen between them. And I just started kind of riffing from there. And the first pages of the interviews that you read in the book are the first things I ever wrote.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah, the Sunny character comes in later, but I just started writing Opal's voice first, and then Pearl's voice. And then I knew Nev was coming in, but he came in a little bit later because I was still
Yeah.
trying to figure him out. But that's how it started. And I was still, at the time, I was still working as an editor, working very
Hmm.
long, hard days and trying to sneak in writing time on the side early in the mornings
Oh
and
goodness.
late at night if I had the energy after work on the weekends. Yeah, I was like waking up at 5 a.m. because that's how much the story was compelling me to the computer every day. And it just got to a point where I thought, I think this is something. I think this is
It
interesting to
is.
me. I'm entertaining myself, I didn't know that it would actually become much of anything, but it didn't get to the point where I knew that I wanted to work on it more seriously and that I wanted
Yeah.
to finish it. I needed to finish it.
So, as kind of speaking about the interviews within the book, the style that you write,
Yeah.
kind of speak to that. Why did you decide to have it almost from multiple points of view at the
Yep.
same time?
So the style it's written is called oral history, which is, it's a style that as a journalist, I've never reported a piece that way myself, but I'd certainly
Okay.
edited pieces that other writers have put together. And especially when I worked at Entertainment Weekly, we use the form a lot to tell the behind the scenes stories of, an iconic movie or an album. And
Mm-hmm.
what it does is by having all these different voices talking about like this one subject, it elevates that subject. It makes it feel instantly huge and iconic. And I wanted, like, that was part of making them feel real to me, making them feel like they were actually famous.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I like this style for the way that, like, I could switch point of view, as you say, like, I can get into everyone's head and easily switch from one to the other. And I like it. In nonfiction, the thing that's funny about oral history is that everyone remembers things very differently,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
very differently. And so you have memories conflicting, you have like battling contexts and all these things. And your empathy can go from one place to another as you hear it from different people's sides.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something that I wanted to do. It was fun for me to kind of, even the characters who are villainous, if you want to call it that. Even
Yeah,
those
they're
characters, it was
flawed.
interesting. Yeah, it was interesting for me to step into those shoes for a bit. Um, and I think, in moments, there's a big scene kind of at the center of the book, which is a concert that really goes left and
Mm-hmm.
causes these headlines that launch Opal and Nev into the spotlight. And I thought that, in that scene, it was really helpful to have so many voices remembering that because each character was like a camera in that theater. So you had
Mm.
someone at the front of the theater, you had someone in the balcony, you had the musicians on stage.
Yeah.
And so you get a different vantage point on this thing that's unfolding. And it was really helpful in those moments.
Now, without me telling the audience what the book is all about, I don't want to go too into it because you need to read the book. The book is really good. It's a uh, let me see if I can surmise. You probably can do it better than I can. But it's an interracial band together.
Yeah,
It's a male singer, a male singer, and a female singer. This is before Afro punk. This is like
that's right.
early Afro punk.
That's right. That's right.
And they
Before there
are
was a term Afro punk,
yes,
but
yes.
there were predecessors of punk music. And Opal, who is my Black woman heroine, Detroit born, she's at the
Kiss on the
forefront
end.
of it. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And Nev is her musical partner. He is an Englishman and he kind of comes to New York in the late 60s, 1970, to kind of, fall into like a folky scene
Hmm.
in New York, but ends up, I won't get into the detail of it, but he and Opal cross paths and they decide to kind of partner together. Initially, she is his background singer, as would normally be the case. It would be very rare for, unfortunately, in
Yes.
those days, very rare for a Black woman to be making this kind of music so centrally.
Hmm.
Um, but so she starts as a background singer, and then there are some events that I alluded to earlier, news events that sort of put her in the spotlight and make them more kind of like equals for a very hot minute
Hmm.
before it kind of falls apart.
I love how you touched on the business behind the music on top of just the music. You could almost hear the music through the words that you were writing.
Oh,
And
thank
I
you.
kept thinking to myself, what would this sound like as I'm reading these books? But it also made me think of, yes, it did seem a little shady that her deals weren't quite the same, and all the things that you read about of artists not being having that artistic freedom, or being put
Right.
in a box, or uh, not having the protection that they needed, or a whole gamut of things. You kind of weave that all throughout the book. What type of research did you do to get those details in there?
Well, luckily, a lot of it I kind of knew already, having worked as an entertainment journalist and having, read a lot. I grew up reading like Rolling Stone and Vibe and like, all of these magazines, and kind of understanding, and watching a lot of documentaries too,
Mm.
honestly, about how, the business works. But also, when I first moved to New York was in the year 2000, and even understanding how a concert works and how coverage of a concert works, all of those different things were really helpful to writing this book, especially. So the last scene is sort of the final revival scene, which, Opal and
Yeah.
Nev in the year 2016, they do reunite for like a big festival show. And I worked at Essence, and I helped to work on the Essence Festival. So like
Okay.
understanding how all these things kind of, um, work together was very helpful. But then I also, there were moments where I went into old archives, and, you know, I mean, thank goodness for the internet. Like, I don't know how writers like
That's how they get all the research
ever.
now.
Oh my gosh. But the New York Times archives are available online. Rolling Stones archives, all these things were like, a search away. I spent a lot of time on Billboard's site
Mm.
looking at old charts, and understanding, what the hits were in 1971, and trying to figure out where Opal and Nev would fit in. There was like such a diversity in styles of music in 1971. You had all
Yeah.
kinds of artists on that top 200 list. And so it was interesting. And then also, there's a scene in the book where I have Opal and Nev on late night TV. They go on Dick
Hmm.
Cavett show, and I spent quite a lot of time watching old Dick Cavett episodes, and really kind of astonished by how edgy and wild late night used to be, and
Yeah,
how
they had James
unfiltered.
Baldwin on there.
Yeah.
you you couldn't let him just freely speak.
Yeah, like just very unfiltered, and kind of an interesting way. And so all that was hugely helpful as research, as well as looking at old photography to like think about fashion and style,
Yeah.
and the kind of images that kind of stay with you, you know, the
Hmm.
images that, end up being iconic, and what it is about them that makes them feel iconic. All of those things I was thinking about.
I can tell you did a lot of research because it shows throughout the book. I think that's what makes it feel so hard to believe that it's a fictional character. It's because of all of the realities that are kind of dispersed throughout the book. And
Yeah.
even like you're using names of people that exist, like Janelle Monáe is in the book,
And
or
mhm.
James Baldwin is in the book, a whole lot of others that are in here that's like, okay, that's real, that's real, this
I was
is not.
doing Yeah, I was blurring lines quite a bit, quite a bit. And there were moments where history did feel overwhelming, because so much happened in those years, they were turbulent and violent years, but also years of like, a consciousness raising, and all of these things. And so I was trying to keep all that in mind. And there were some things that I knew that I wanted to include in the history that I felt like I can't write a book set in this time and not touch on that. And there were other things where I was like, I don't really want to get into that too much. Just maybe like briefly mention, but you know, it was interesting, that process of like looking at those years and the timelines of those years and figuring out like what would be inescapable
Yeah.
in terms of like what they would be living through, what they would be thinking about, what would touch them and touch their consciousness.
Now, tell me if I'm wrong or not, but Sunny's character, the description of her sounds a lot like you. I was like,
Yeah, so Sunny is the journalist who is weaving together everyone's stories to create this history of Opal and Nev, and she also has a personal tie to them. And this is not a spoiler to say because it's literally the first sentence in the book.
okay.
She is the daughter of Opal and Nev's drummer, who was killed before Sunny was born in a riot that kicks off during a Opal and Nev concert. And so she is sort of embarking on this project. She's a journalist. She has just been named the editor-in-chief of her magazine. And, you know, she is like Opal, often the only one, only Black woman, only Black person in her professional world. And she is feeling a certain pressure, but also it's a personal goal of hers to sort of learn more about her father and his world and everything that happens. But yes, so I was also a magazine editor. And like Sunny, I also kind of grew up loving this music and being very interested in it. And there are some other things, you know, that we have in common. There's a section where she's talking about the experience of hearing music that you really love and the physical reaction that you have in your body when you hear that. And that is something that like is very true to me in terms of getting the goosebumps and like almost like a fear response when you hear something that you feel like is going to change your world forever. So there's a lot of closeness between Sunny and I for sure.
And the hair.
And the hair, yes. I forgot she has locks.
I was like, wait a minute. This sounds real familiar. Oh, see, yes.
Not anymore. But yeah.
You touched on. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, she was a character that actually, so I had written most of the first draft before Sunny even existed. And what happened was, you know, I went to graduate school and I started workshopping the novel, and my classmates, you know, they really liked all the interviews and everything, but they kept asking, like, we're just curious, who is everybody talking to? Who's on the other side of the recorder? And it made me think, oh, like, what if I made that other person on the side of the recorder a character who has a stake in all of this?
Yeah.
And is sort of mirroring Opal's experience. And so creating Sunny also creates a present timeline where I'm able to do some interesting things and comparing and contrasting the eras.
Yeah, I like how you made it seem as if the same things that people were fighting for or against, and discrimination and the way that Black women were treated, the way that Black men were treated during the early 60s and 70s hadn't changed too much. We're still fighting for the same things.
We're still having the same arguments, the same fights. Absolutely. And that was, you know, I was writing a lot of this book in 2015 and at the beginning of 2016, where my anxiety was on 10 amid that election and watching like disaster approaching in slow motion, you know? And a lot of this book was working through that. And, you know, election night 2016, I called my mother, you know, in tears. And I'm her only child, so she's very protective and very supportive and loving. And she just tried to soothe me and say, yes, it's bad. It's been bad before. Like this feels
Yeah.
very much like when I was in my 20s, and yeah.
Yeah, I think I've heard a few people say that it's a moment in time, but it's not the moment in time.
Right.
It's things
Yeah.
will have its ebb and flow, its rhythms, and it's frustrating because you, especially the older you get, you see more than one rhythm, more than one
Yeah.
flow. It's like, ah, Jesus, here we go again. One thing I did enjoy, there were a lot of things I enjoyed in the book, but there's a part where you talk about this cultural grounding among Black people of all over. And I was thinking, that is so true. I am from East Texas, little podunk town in East Texas, but I can meet someone from New York or
Oh yeah.
from who knows on the other side of the US, and they know what that smell sounds like when a hot comb hits the back of your neck.
Oh, listen. There was and I just love the internet for this, for memes and all of these things that are like, Black Twitter. There was
Mhm.
one that was like spending the summer at your grandmama's house, and it was like a split screen of four things. It was a box fan.
Yes.
It was the logo of the Young and the Restless. It was like some snap peas that you're supposed to snap.
Yes.
And I forgot what the fourth one was, but it was like all of us instantly got that, and it's
Yes.
because, like, honestly, like all of us are a little bit Southern, like, and the Great Migration, the patterns,
Mhm.
and that's something that I write about in the book. You know, Opal's mother is part of the Great Migration, that path from Alabama, from Birmingham to Detroit,
Mhm.
but there were also paths from Florida to New York, from Louisiana to California. Like all of us have that shared thing in us generations later, and it's a beautiful thing.
Yes. I'm trying to figure out where the grandparents got all these peas from. There were always so many in the bowl. Like I never saw them come in the house. It was just so many.
So many, so many.
But I thought that was just something that was truly like, oh yeah, now I get it for sure. It also made me think too. This year was my first year attending Afropunk in Atlanta. I've never been to
Oh,
the one in New York,
yeah.
and I came in with this idea of what it was going to be like, and it was so much more. It was just beautiful Black expression from every spectrum you could think of, all
Yeah.
in one spot. And that's what the concerts in your book made me think about. Like, oh, this is like Afro punk slash Coachella, all of that
Mhm. Mhm.
together. Oh,
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for saying that. Afropunk originally was a documentary that came out in 2003 by James Spooner,
hmm,
who actually has a book coming out about his own experience growing up Black and punk in California, a graphic novel called The High Desert.
mm,
That's very good. But so he did a documentary in 2003, and I saw that movie, and it greatly changed my life because I felt seen. And I didn't know that other fans of this music were out there. And what happened was, so there was a documentary first, and then there were all these message boards that
okay.
we were doing message boards. And so people, like Black folks from all over, were connecting over this music and having these conversations and having this safe space, where they could be their full selves and be completely free in that. And then it led to, the first festivals. Like I went to I think I was at the first Afro Punk, which was just in the parking lot of Brooklyn Academy of
Hmm,
Music. It was a couple of skate ramps and a stage, and it was amazing. It was an amazing
wow.
feeling then, and to see it grow and change has been really interesting. The music has definitely widened in scope, but
Yeah.
I will say that it's really about like Black freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you go there and you see
Everything.
young Black people. I mean, I'm 45 now, but like, so I'm a little too old, but
Ooh,
you
you
just
look
see,
beautiful. Just
oh, thank you.
wow.
Thank you. But, you go there and you see young people just living their free black ass lives. And it's an amazing
Yes.
thing and something that I wish had existed when I was that age to really truly appreciate the existence of it. So yeah, I'm glad you got to experience that and see and
Oh, I'm
just take
definitely
it
going back.
in.
I'm
Yeah.
definitely going back again. For sure. Now I know what it's like. I was like, oh, I came two together. I need to
It's
be.
like it's a fashion show, it's a concert,
Yes.
it's an experience, you know?
Yes. I
Um,
tried foods I'd never tried before. It's it made me think too of even the character in your book, Opal. I, as you can tell, I love Opal's character. Opal is my favorite character in the whole book. But she kind of developed this persona. Just it kind of felt like it was in her and she didn't know
yeah,
it was there.
right.
Then before you knew it, she was
Yeah.
the headliner.
Yeah. Yeah, um she sort of just it's part of her. She has this confidence and she has this desire to be big, like she's never making herself small. She's always like,
Yes.
I want to be that one, you know what I mean? And I love that about her. I feel like it's something that I wish I had a little bit more of, like
Yeah.
writing the character and kind of projecting and doing some wish fulfillment. And she's a messy character, don't get me wrong.
Yes, she
Like Opal
is.
is wrong as hell. A lot of
Yes,
times she's
she is.
just wrong.
As a lot of us are.
Yeah, but she has that conviction. You can't take your eyes off of her. And it's just the right set of circumstances, like living in New York in this time and all
Hmm.
of these things that help to bring it out of her, like befriending Virgil and like learning how to create music, all of these experiences. And it's the exposure, it's the opportunity that
Yeah.
really helps her to blossom.
And kind of speaking of her character, although she was very intriguing and just over the top and empowering, even though she grew up being made fun of and bullied and all of these things, she made some wrong choices too. She made
Oh,
some choices she probably should not have.
yeah.
And it also had me kind of conflicted because if I was Sunny, I don't know if I would have liked to have been around. That's that takes some. I don't even know the word for it, but that takes something to want to be
Yeah.
around someone who has affected your family in a
Right.
not so good way.
And that's why the Sunny story was so interesting to tell, because I did sort of see Opal for her as a very taboo figure, someone
Yeah,
that she's absolutely not supposed to be interested
you
in
should
knowing
not
anything
like
about
her.
or
How you
talking
like
to.
her?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, right. And honestly, like there was a whole section of the book that I wrote that I ended up cutting because I couldn't make it work with the rest of the narrative. But it was Sunny's coming of age and the difficulties that she had with her
Mm,
mother because of her fascination with Opal and how
mm,
that put a strain on their relationship.
okay,
Because I didn't
I
mention
can
this is
see
also
that.
the first sentence of the book. So um, Sunny's father, who was killed, was having an affair with Opal at the time. Okay.
Oh, I wasn't trying to tell it, but now y'all
So
know.
it's in the first sentence of the book. It's the first sentence. So
So y'all
that's
know
your tease.
juicy.
Yeah, it's a little bit juicy. So, obviously Sunny's mother is not a fan of this woman who wrecks her family life. And yet Sunny, there's something about Opal that is so compelling and so interesting musically that she sneaks her records, and
Oh,
she hides them under the bed, and she has very mixed feelings, but she also feels like getting to know Opal is a way to get to know her father,
yeah.
because she doesn't know a lot about her father, and her mother doesn't like to talk about her father because she's
Mm,
so angry. But yeah, so it's a lot of like confusing emotions for Sunny that she works through over the course of working on this book.
Yeah, I'm sitting there reading her. I was like, I don't know if I would be. Oh, well, I know I would not be okay with my kid wanting to have almost like it kind of felt like she idolized
Yeah.
this woman.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of
Yeah,
that way.
it was like, ooh, I kept wanting to. Son, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Gotta
Yeah.
let her go through, let them go through and see what they need to discover on their own.
Right.
That's how you gotta look at it. But there's so many good parts. But another one for sure that caught my eye. I think I made a couple of notes on this one. I'm a definite like tab person,
I love it.
note person, uh, on the books that are mine. I do that
Yes.
with, but in the community books, I don't do that. But my books, yes. There was a part where you talked about the voices of Black women shouldn't be discounted, diminished, or be hijacked for our shine whenever it suits. Oh, I
Mhm.
was like, oh,
Mm.
yes, they should not
Yeah,
at all.
when I was thinking about, Opal and Nev as a partnership and thinking about, okay, so they have this moment, what happens after that? And the heartbreaking thing about it, another way that I made it, I think, unfortunately, very realistic is that, their careers go in opposite directions. Like
Hmm.
Nev's career as a
Yeah,
white male, he's afforded the freedom to change and develop and be sort of that chameleon, and to
yes,
try all kinds of different things. And he's given so much latitude. And Opal is not.
yeah. He
Opal is
got to
not.
remove himself from the trauma and have a
Right.
life. It stayed with her like a shadow.
It stayed with her like a shadow. And in fact, she almost becomes like a footnote. Like his career
Hmm.
becomes so big that she becomes like, instead of her own big person, she becomes like a little footnote in his story,
Yeah,
you
it,
know? And that is absolutely, that was one of the more heartbreaking things to explore
yeah.
in writing this book.
Now, of
Yeah.
all the characters that you have, and each one had parts about them that I like. Well, not each one. There was a couple I ain't like, but but most of them had parts that I enjoyed. I could see having their own backstory. Have you thought about exploring that more and kind of digging in? I kind of want to hear what's up with the sister. Like,
Pearl.
girl,
Yeah.
yeah,
A lot, I have absolutely loved hearing from readers who have loved Pearl, because I think Pearl is just the sweetest and very misunderstood.
yes.
And one of the ways that Opal is horrible is that she is so mean to her sister at times.
Everybody knows a Pearl.
Yeah.
Everybody knows. Okay, Pearl, we
So
hear you.
yeah,
Don't sing.
yeah,
We hear you, Pearl.
yeah. But Pearl is Opal's half sister. They share a mother, have different fathers, and Pearl was always the sort of more, traditionally more attractive, more talented, really, in terms of like
Mm,
she can really actually sing. Opal is kind of um she's an artist. She kind of interprets things. She vocalizes, as actually Betty Davis said that she did. Betty Davis didn't call what she did singing, more like vocalizing.
yeah, y'all look her up.
Yeah, yeah. So
She's
that's more
beautiful.
Opal style, but like that church singing, that's Pearl all the way. And
Hmm.
so, it's Pearl ultimately goes like a different route. She goes deeper into the church, and Opal doesn't always have respect for that.
Yeah.
But, Pearl is, despite everything and despite their differences, she loves her sister. They do love each other. And at the moment of highest crisis for Opal in the novel, she does like spend time with Pearl. Pearl comes to her,
Hmm.
and the sisters spend some time together. And she does, in her own way, take inspiration from Pearl as to how she wants to shape the rest of her career and her path going forward.
In my head, I see Pearl is going, okay, sister, it didn't work for you. And she comes off and launches this gospel career. She's like the Tamala Man.
Yeah. And
She's
I thought about that. I thought about giving her a gospel career. And I just didn't, because I wanted to just have the story more honed. But that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about writing something separate about Pearl. But, I do have these pages, as I said, these pages about Sonny's coming of age. I ended up cutting, and someday it might not be like the specific Sonny character, but it might be a different kind of like story that incorporates some of those elements. I thought about that. I know I've been asked, am I going to write anything about Virgil? Who was a great character to write.
Virgil, he had his own.
Yeah.
I just want to be styled by Virgil. I want that style. I want the feathers. I want it all. I want the flow. Sitting there like, I need one.
Oh, but they were all fun characters to write. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I'm sitting here and I've been observing you on the interview here, and I can't help but see behind you.
Oh, yeah.
Your art pieces, words like freedom.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about is that Nina Simone behind you too?
It is Nina Simone. And I don't think you can see the rest of the frame, but she's in conversation with James Baldwin in a very animated conversation. And then above that is the Marching 100 from FAMU. I am a FAMU graduate.
Hey, shout out.
And then above that is Betty Davis, who we've been talking about a lot tonight. And the Words Like Freedom pennant was actually a gift from Schomburg Center. I did an event with them earlier in my book tour. Yeah.
Now, since you have a love of music, you've written about music. Are you musically inclined as well?
Oh, I wish. I took some piano lessons when I was a kid, and maybe I did it it was less than a year. And my first recital, the day of the recital, I broke out in chicken pox, and then I never went back to lessons. But it's not, I am not really musically talented myself. I remember feeling very frustrated, and the metronome going and me being off rhythm and all of that. But I do love music. I love listening to music, and I am sweating your Low End Theory poster behind you, your Tribe Called Quest.
This is my youngest baby. She's my artist.
Nice.
15-year-old. So I told her, this is what I want. And she just goes, here you go, Mom. This is her career to paint.
Oh, I love it. It's beautiful.
Well, thank you. Yeah. She definitely keeps me busy for sure. If I'm doing the reading and interviewing, because I love books, and she'll ask me, what should she paint? She just did one here recently with James Baldwin for me, but it's not done yet.
Oh, beautiful.
So maybe I should have her do one like that. That'd be real good. I know we're coming up close on time, so I want to be mindful of your time for sure. But one of the questions I usually ask all of our authors is, well, you've always been in writing of some sort. You've been a journalist and types of things like that. Did you ever have the vision of becoming a full-time writer, novelist?
It was always my dream. And in fact, so my mom she kept a lot of like my school projects from when I, all through my elementary, middle school, high school. And she kept, in 9th grade, our life sciences class, we had to write a fake Time magazine cover story about ourselves in the year 2025. And my mom kept this, and it was like I had like cut out of a real Time magazine, the red border and the Time magazine in this. I had my tiny little like wallet, cool portrait.
Wow.
And my essay was basically, I was a very successful novelist. That was my future.
Well, you got it.
Yeah.
You definitely got it.
Although I will say I had written, I think I was on my 4th novel.
Mm-hmm.
I had
you get there.
twins. I lived
wow.
in Maine, of all places. I don't know why I lived in Maine. I probably was reading too much Stephen King. But yeah, like I always dreamed in the most secret part of my heart. Like I always wanted to write novels. And
that's beautiful.
This year has been, it's been very hard in a lot of ways. It's been a difficult year for so many of us. And it's complicated for me because it is also the year that my dream came true, you know, and it doesn't look exactly the way that I thought that it would, but it still happened. And I have to pinch myself about that a lot.
Well, I just say congratulations
on
having your dream to come true. And thank you for such a phenomenal book. Like this was a lot of fun.
I'm so glad.
So much fun to read from the beginning to the end, the ups and downs. Yours is definitely one of those books you have those books you reread. I will definitely reread this for sure.
That makes me so happy. That is really, I was thinking about Black women when I was reading this book and just wanting to give them something that they could understand and relate to and have fun reading. So it means the world to hear that. Thank you, Shaylin.
Well, thank you. I really hope that you're able to come back again when you come out with the next book, because I know it's coming. That you got 2 others. You got to reach the rest of the dream.
I know, right? I gotta. I only have a couple years.
So, anytime you want to come, I'm here. We plan to have, well, whenever COVID lets us be great, we plan to have a lot more in-person types of things.
That'd be amazing.
So I would love to. We just did a hike and read this past weekend where we had, and I was reading your book on my hike.
Love it.
So we'll be doing a lot of those and a lot of other events with Book Mecca. So I definitely invite you to come out to any of them for sure.
I would love that. Thank you so much.
Well, you are welcome. Well, all of our Book Mecca people, and I know y'all will see this soon, I always end with a quote, and it's usually a random quote that I see and it catches my eye and it makes sense at the time that I'm in. So this one's from Zora Neale Hurston, and it is, I love myself when I'm laughing, and then again when I'm looking mean and impressive. I was like, oh, if that's not Opal, I don't know what it is.
I love it. And of course, Zora Neale Hurston from Florida, like me, North Florida. So
there we go.
It was very fitting. I love it.
There we go. Well, thank you again. And thank you to all our Book Mecca family that's out there. Next month's Breakthrough series, we will not have a one author. It's going to be something special. So y'all just wait. It's November. Special time. So good stuff. So thank you again, Dawnie, for coming out, and we look forward to it again, everyone. Before we wrap up, if you have not already gotten the book, The Final Revival of Opal and Neb, get it today. You can get it on bookmecca.org. You can also get it on any other, please shop at an independent bookstore if you can. Shop at an independent bookstore. But thank you again and have a blessed night. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.